Okay, cool.
Okay, today's guest, excited to have Chris Moulton with us. Moulty was former Spokane Chiefs assistant general manager. And I guess that's where we'll start if that works for you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So you were with the Hitmen before, then transitioned into the Chiefs. Like, how did that all come about and evolve in the beginning of your career?
Yeah, my scouting story is kind of crazy, to be honest. I was working with the junior A team here in Fernie, and happened to go to the lobby one day to grab something, and the lady selling the programs was 5 minutes late. And the president said, "Hey, Chris, can you stand here for 5 minutes until she gets here?" And I said, "Sure." And then a gentleman came through the door and just started asking me questions about the Fernie rink and the league and blah, blah, blah. And we had a long chat about Sean Horkoff at the time, who was a young kid in trail just coming out. And then he said, "Hey, come see me in the first intermission." And then after that, he said, "Hey, I'm starting a franchise in Calgary in the Western Hockey League. Would you like to scout for me?" And I was, 23, 22 years old, just out of college. And I said, "Sure." And then I never heard from him forever. So I thought, oh, he probably forgot about me. And then one day, and it was like the 1st of August, I go to get my mail, and there's business cards that say Chris Moulton, Calgary Hitmen. So I said,
No way.
"Oh, I was crazy." So
Wow.
if I wouldn't, funny thing was at the time, if I wouldn't have sat there for 5 minutes manning the program box, I wouldn't have probably got my job. So it's funny. So then I just started there, and obviously with the Hitmen, everything, all hell broke loose with Calgary first couple of years, with all the Graham James stuff. And we had a big staff, and then we all kind of wanted to quit with everything going on, and we thought it was the right thing to do. And then they asked some of us back and, guaranteed us that they were headed in the right direction. And so then I stayed on. I was one of the few guys that stayed on. And then from there, I put in 10 years. I was there for 3. I was there for 7, with just as an area guy. And then my last 3 there, I was a traveling guy. So that was 10. And then Tim Speltz had asked permission to talk to me about the Spokane job. And I was honored. I was kind of taken back by that. And he hired a bunch of us at the same time to come in and make some changes. So then I jumped on with Spokane, and I was there for 14 years.
Wow. So when you were with Spokane, what was your first role with them?
Head scout, director of player personnel, I guess, was my first role. I was that for a long time, and in the last 3 or 4 years, I was director of player personnel, assistant general manager. So same job, just a different title, so.
Yeah. And then now you work with Wasserman, or is it Wasserman?
Wasserman, yeah.
It's one of the bigger player agencies probably in the world. What's that transition been like from going in the Western League to that?
It's been, harder than I thought. Wasserman had a buddy of mine had worked for Wasserman. They're a huge agency representing tons of sports and different outside interests other than sports, and but had no hockey presence in the West, and then they eventually purchased or got involved with the Orr Group in Ontario, and then they just started to take off, but they still had no presence in the West. So when I was leaving Spokane, I needed a change. My time in Spokane was just coming to an end. It was time for change for me and probably for them. So then, Wasserman had approached me, and then I had no interest. I just didn't think representing players was what I wanted to do. And then when I actually sat down with those guys, the 3 of them that I'm involved with, Jeff Jackson and Dave Gagne in Ontario and Jen Moldaver in LA, I learned that it was a lot more. I could just tell, sometimes, to be truthful, some guys that represent players are in it for the right reason, and some are in it for the wrong. And there's a lot of great groups out there that represent players, and a lot of guys that do good jobs. But I had to see, I had to figure out who I was going to work for. I didn't want to be that guy where they're like, I like Chris, but I don't like that group, So once I got to know them, I knew how much they cared about their players. I could see it. Jeff works heavily with with Connor McDavid and then, you know, Judd's heavily involved with Austin Matthews. Like I can see those guys, which is fine. But it was the way they spoke about their younger guys, which made me happy. You know, like it's quite easy to represent big name players. I wouldn't say easy, sorry. It's easy on your mind where you can say I work with these guys because they're special athletes.
Yeah.
But it's how you treat the other guys that made the difference for me. And so when, you know, Judd and Jeff and Gags, Dave Gagne, when they started talking about, you know, Quinton Byfield and Jamie Drysdale and Suzuki brothers and all those guys, we had 5 guys in the World Juniors, and there's a bunch of guys out east. And when they started talking about them with a lot of pride and care for their families, and that's when I went, okay, this is different. This is who I am, where I take a lot of pride in building relationships with people. It's the most important thing for me. I mean, I'm not looking at getting rich at this game. The fact that I get paid to watch hockey and watch kids grow is everything to me. You know, like that's all that matters to me. I'm not in hockey to say I'm in hockey. I'm not in hockey to make money at it. I mean, I like to make money at it, but I mean, I'm not about getting rich, you know? So I learned that, and then I just jumped in, and then the transition's been interesting, man. I mean, it's I've got some kids that I'm working with that I think are awesome, with awesome families. The part that was the toughest for me was I guess my competition at times, you know, like there's certain groups where I'm like, okay. And then there were certain groups that I was like, okay, well, you know, geez, you know, I hope those families figure that out quick, you know, like that's not being ignorant. I just think that there's really good ones, and there's guys that are going to be here one day and gone the next, you know? So that's my biggest thing. And it's probably to a fault that I care about families and kids. And I want to make sure that they get the guidance that they deserve. And it doesn't mean it has to be me or our group. I just want them to get the right ones. So that was my hardest thing, was just like, you know, was watching that. But the easiest thing with everything was I was in the rinks with my buddies. You know, I got to see all my friends. I'm Switzerland now, so I could actually sit with other teams and pick their brains and have conversations, where before everything was tight chest, you know, tight to the chest, where you didn't want to share with the Spokane guy. But I mean, like I said, I've made relationships with guys like yourself and everybody, where now I'm Switzerland. So I can, at the Bantam draft, it was awesome because I talked to every team off and on about everything. And it was just nice to see how other guys handle their business, you know, because I never saw that. So interesting. Yeah. But the hardest transition was just the process of, you know, competition, because I never had competition before in the Western Rock League. You like who you like, you pick who you pick, you know, and if Tri-Cities picked a player I like, you got frustrated, but you're like, that's just part of the game. Yeah. Now, you know, you sell yourself and you think you're a great person, and then all of a sudden, you know, maybe a young player goes to a guy that you're not sold on, then you it hurts your heart a little bit, right? So, yeah,
it's a different side of the game for sure, and different perspectives. And jumping back to your time in Spokane, just talk about the draft a little bit. Like for me, being kind of an outsider to it all, and I had met you when I was scouting with the Raiders, and you were always one of the guys that kind of made me feel comfortable in the rinks, being a new person in that kind of circle of people. And so it's obvious to see how important relationships are for you. And then I think with the draft for you guys always seem to just take, maybe it wasn't always the consensus pick that was on social media that everybody thought was a no-brainer. You guys weren't afraid to just pick who you wanted, and it always seemed to work out. So just speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think, you know, we had great leadership. You know, when I came in, there probably wasn't a better person to learn under than Tim Speltz. And Tim could have easily took the draft over at any time and pushed his will on our group, but he let me do my thing. You know, he let me do things my way. He obviously offered guidance, and I consider him a mentor still, but he allowed me to have some guidance. And then, you know, the key to our group is that I surrounded myself with great people. And the one thing that I always wanted to happen was that when I went to a rink and met a parent, my happiest moments or my proudest moments is when a parent said to me, "Hey, I met your area guy. What a great guy." Mm-hmm. And that was important for us. We wanted to build relationships, and you know, you are right. I mean, we didn't really conform, to what people were telling us who to pick or who everybody thought. We did a ton of homework. We got to know families and stuff, and that was important for us, and character, and the package was huge. And sometimes we may have taken guys early, but we knew that was the type of people we needed to keep our culture in Spokane, which was about character and compete, and so sometimes we stepped outside of the box, and it didn't work every time, but it works. It worked. I thought we did a good job when I was there. But I think it's at the end of the day, these kids change. They just do, from year to year, from month to month. And at the end of the day, if you pick the players that you believe are best for your culture and best for your program, as long as they want to put in the work, things will usually work out pretty well, and that's what we found, is that, if you've got player A and player B, and player A, might be a little bit ahead of player B, but player B's character is off the charts, and he buys in, and he doesn't cause us heartaches at the billets, and he doesn't cause us heartaches at the school, and he's a team first guy, and he helps you build our culture. Then a lot of times we took player B, and I mean, this is a sacrifice. We missed out on some players where I was like, okay. And sometimes we were wrong. There was a couple players where, I just certainly wasn't sure on their character. And next thing you know, they're the leaders on their teams when they're 19 and 20. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, we identified packages, which included parents and stuff that we thought were a fit. And to be honest, the few times that I stepped outside of the box or got a little too confident in my abilities to change people, I was wrong. And I'm not always right on how things should be done or how you raise your kids, but sometimes you get a feel on this family or this young man may not be part of what our program's about. And sometimes I thought to myself, oh, they're going to change, or they'll get it, or they'll see what we're about. And usually 7 out of 10 times they stay the same, and usually those are the type of players that we move on to other programs. So
and then like finding players like Adam Beckman has over 100 points this year in the league. He's a 5th round pick, a guy that had 40 points in his draft year in Bantam. Do you remember watching that draft year? Did you see that coming?
No. We saw a guy that was creative and intelligent in a small package. And sometimes those guys in the Saskatchewan area that are smaller guys, sometimes they'll slide a bit. Mm-hmm. We drafted Cordell Larson, same thing. I think we got him in the 8th or 9th round. And by the end, he was playing top 6 and spoke, you know what I mean? But with Bex, we saw a kid that was super creative with the puck, just slick, and you just saw something in his abilities, but he wasn't a household name there. There was a lot of names ahead of him, even when he was going into his midget year. Like, he couldn't get a commitment from those midget teams in Saskatoon. Wow. So he ends up in North Battleford playing midget AAA, and then all of a sudden he starts to grow. All of a sudden, the big difference for me, for Adam Beckman, not to take anything away from his abilities, because he's awesome, he's a great kid, is when he was 15 in North Battleford, he was a go-to guy. So he never went to midget AAA and sat and killed penalties and sat on the bench. So he took massive steps as a 15-year-old because he had the puck on his stick all the time. So and then the other thing that really benefited him, I thought, is that we weren't in a hurry to bring him to Spokane at 16. We knew that he could probably handle it, but we thought he's still slight. He's going to play. He's going to be one of the best players in Saskatchewan. So we sent him back at 16, and then he was the most dominant player in Saskatchewan in his midget year. And then he came back and he was on a high. And for me, that was part of the difference with Bex. It wasn't so much of projecting where he'd be, is that he was always in a position to be successful. Always had the puck on his sticks. Always, and so we didn't rush him. And I'm not sure. I honestly can say this. I'm not sure he'd be where he is right now at this stage if he didn't go back and play midget at 16. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying he couldn't get where he is, but to be where he is now is maybe the most. I thought he's probably one of the most dominant guys in the Western Hockey League now. I think it's because he just came in on a high. Like, he dominated midget and he came in and said, "Okay, I can do this." Yeah. Not like, "Holy cow, what am I going to do now?"
Yeah. So, in your experience, do you find players that go back often kind of find the benefits of it later on down the road like that. I think, like, for me, having coached at that level, it's always, when you have those 15-year-old players, it's always an ongoing conversation with the parents and teams of what are you going to do at 16. And it seems like, I think from the parents and players side, it's a rush to get to junior.
Well, you're 100% right. That's the biggest mistake in the game right now, is everybody's in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's in a hurry to move their 13-year-old kids across the country to play Bantam AAA. Everybody's in a hurry to get to play, to play junior at 16. Like, everybody's in a hurry, and that's not how it works. I mean, there is guys that can obviously play junior hockey at 16 and some effectively, but as a whole, usually it takes some time. And I know that, like, once again, when I was working with Tim Speltz, he was never in a hurry. He would always say, hey, like, when it's not even just about hockey. It's how can they handle it away from the rink? You're 16 years old, you're from Swan River, Manitoba, and we're moving you to Spokane, Washington at 16 years old. It's different country, different culture, different school, different home, different hockey. And it takes a lot, and so all these people that are so consumed with playing, junior hockey at 16, it's not the healthiest for me. And I think, sure, if you're ready, you should play at 16. But I also think that if, we had so many examples in Spokane, Tyler Johnson played later in his career. Derek Ryan played later in his junior career. Adam Beckman, none of those guys played at 16.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Some, the top end ones do, but I mean, there's no hurry. Even those guys that have signed contracts now, I hope they all play. If they get a chance to play at 16, that's great. But the key word in everything is play. It's not wear a jersey. It's not be forward 14 or defenseman 8. It's play. So I think that's the biggest thing. And sometimes, like you said, you'll get those guys back from junior and their heart will be hurt and their ego will be hurt. But eventually they usually come around, you know what I mean, and realize, hey, I'm back with my buddies. I'm living with my mom and dad or friends. And they usually bounce back. But people have to realize there's no hurry. None.
No, like, I think back to just the players that we've gone through, and I think the guys that have come back at 16 they're doing so well now. Like, I remember going through with Braden Tracy, and he told us from day one, like, I want to play because Moose Jaw's got a great team. I'm not going to play a whole lot there, so if I come back and play midget, I'm going to get to play. And he did, and played with Team Canada that year, and obviously it's worked out really well for him. So, and I know it's a conversation that we seem to have every single year with players, but I think it's important for them to hear that.
Well, but a guy like Braden Tracy he's an offensive guy, so he has to be able to create offensively, right? And sometimes, right or wrong, and not taking anyone, but if those 16-year-olds are going to play with 18 and 19-year-olds that have limited skill that are playing sort of a role, they aren't really able to showcase their skill. They give pucks, don't get pucks back at the right time, and the skilled guys, they got to play with other guys with some skill. So.
I agree. A couple more just on your time with Spokane. You're in a position where you're managing a team of scouts that are all across the country. What was that like? Like, how did you guys manage that? I think Spokane's the one team where it seems like your guys' scouts have never changed. And I think that's pretty cool. Obviously speaks to the importance of relationships again, and the culture and the loyalty there. So what's that like, managing a team of scouts? A lot of times I'm sure there's some disagreements throughout the season. Just kind of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, for the longest time. It's changed since I left. A couple guys have gone their own way and stuff, but when we were there, we had it. We had the same. You know what? They're family. Like they're all those guys that are still left there, and the guys that aren't there anymore. They're my friends and my family, and I think that I treated them as such. I don't think I tried to pull rank. Obviously, there's times when you need to demand work or demand stuff get done, turn your reports in, turn your expenses in. You kind of got to crack the whip. But they're my friends and my family, and it was easy for me. And in saying that, it was just we argued like that. Like it was not. I didn't want yes men. I wanted guys who tested me and said, hey, Chris, you're wrong. And so we had that. I think the biggest thing is how I looked at it was that, you know, so I had business owners, successful guys. I used to joke that I was the lowest paid man on my staff because, you know, you're dealing with, you know, I had police officers, lawyers, business owners, guys that were, you know, high in HR and oil and gas. And literally I was the lowest paid guy on staff. So I used to joke, like, how am I going to pull rank on these guys when, you know, I'm not that guy. Right. So I used to, you know, basically, you know, we were a team, and there was a lot of we's and us, and that's how we looked at things. And I think the biggest thing is you kept them involved. I think if you keep people like that involved, if you keep your area guys involved, even to the smallest extent, then as long as they feel like they're part of the process, that's important. And even with trades and stuff, you know, like sometimes they weren't involved in trades, but, you know, before the release, you know, I would try to send out a little thing and say, hey, boys, you know what, we made a move. This is the move. We're not releasing it until tomorrow, but I wanted you to know ahead of time. And even those small things made a difference because, you know, they didn't hear it via Twitter. You know what I mean? And it's something to be said when you involve them in the process. And my biggest thing was that my staff that I had in my last 2 or 3 years, well, for the whole thing, because I lost a few really good ones, but they were just unbelievable human beings. And it's funny how, you know, I have relationships with their entire family. You know what I mean? Like, I know their wives, their kids, they know my family. We know each other's families. And when that happens, when you're making $300, $400 a month or whatever as you do as an area guy, which isn't very much, it's worth it. You know, if you're not enjoying yourself as a hockey scout, you're in the wrong business. Like if you're just happy wearing a jacket and calling yourself a scout, you're not going to be successful for a long term, and B, you're not going to enjoy yourself. Like, you got to go there and just love being at the rink. And that's whenever I was with my area guys, I loved being there. And the last thing was I wasn't a babysitter. You know, I included them in on the process. They're grown men, you know, some older than me. And so we just did things as a group, and it made it easy, you know. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Just one last question with the Spokane. So what does the process look like for you guys? You draft a player, and then in a couple of years before they become Spokane Chiefs on the roster, how much influence do you guys have in their development in those couple of years in between?
Well, I think it's a fine line. You know, it's a fine line between pushing kids to do stuff that they can do or want to do and letting them do their own thing. I think we always inquired to who they were working with, what they were doing, where they were at, but we never pushed. You know, I don't think there was any times where we said, you have to play here. You have to do this. You know, of course, you know, if we thought a kid needed to get his feet going, we'd say, hey, like, you know, what are you doing for power skating? What are you doing for this? Like, who are you seeing? And then if they didn't work, if we think they still needed a step, we'd say, hey, have you tried somebody else? Because it's always good to work because everybody's different, you know, whatever. But as far as the development goes, we just kind of built those relationships where it was always open discussions. And when people said to me, hey, I don't want to send my kid to an academy this year just because, you know, whatever, and we just want to keep them close to home, you know, I would talk to them about it. And if it made some sense on their end and stuff, then we'd be just like, okay, you know, like, you know, I'm not there to, I mean, they're their parents. I'm not telling them how to raise their kids, how to spend their money. So I would basically just build those relationships. Tim and I, back in the day, when kids were going into their 16-year-old year or going into their 17-year-old that had a chance to play, we would drive to their houses, Tim and I, and we'd sit at their kitchen tables and we would talk, you know, and just say, like, where are we at? Where are you at? How are you doing? And that was the hugest thing. It was that I remember so many living rooms, and it was funny because Timmy used to always say, show me your bedroom. Like, show me what you got going on. Show me where you play your games and stuff. And this kid would give us the tour of the house. And then we'd learn a lot, you know, like we'd say, geez, that kid didn't make his bed, or, you know, that kid's got 17 Coke cans downstairs beside his PS4 and a bag of chips, you know, like, it's funny, but we used to go out there and see them and, you know, be around their families. And we love that. And we never had a bad experience ever. But, you know, we just we got to know them as people, and then we worked with them to get them where they needed to be, but I remember, just like I said, we used to drive to everywhere, just drive, and we'd have like we'd be so full by the end of the day because we'd have breakfast at one place, lunch at the other, and then we'd have an afternoon appointment, and mom would bring us out some snacks, and Tim and I wouldn't even have to eat dinner because we were so full of coffee and treats. But that was important to us, is like when kids believe that the organizations want them and care about them, they'll push for their own development. Right. So
that's awesome. I think doing that, you probably learn a lot about guys, just seeing them in their natural environment that they're in every day.
Oh, it's I remember being in Notre Dame one time, sitting on a picnic bench. Sorry, I ramble on, Blair.
No, that's what this is for.
I was sitting on a picnic in Notre Dame. Everybody was leaving school because the school year was over, and we had 3 kids at Notre Dame. And so I drove to Wilcox, 8 hours, and I loved it because I just saw, I saw families pulling up with their station wagons and their SUVs, and they're piling their kids in there, and the kids are so happy because school's over. And I remember sitting on a park bench waiting for one of my kids to come out, and a mom I knew had a son that played was listed with a different organization. And she said to me, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I have 3 kids here. It's their last day of school. I wanted to be here for school." And I said, I wanted to see them before they went home. And it's easier for me to see 3 kids in one spot than go to 3 different locations. So, and she goes, "So why?" Like, why? And I'm like, well, I think it's important, for me to be here for these events, and I get to sit. And it was funny because she said to me, "Okay." And then she walked away, and I said, "Gee, that was an odd conversation." But then I found out later from one of my kids' mom that she was angry that nobody from their organization came out to see him. So not that there's a right or wrong way to do things, but it kind of made me feel like, okay, I'm doing the right thing here. When another family says, I wish they would have came out and saw me here, saw us here, and saw him away from the rink, moving his stuff, excited about starting his summer. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, getting into your new role there. When you were working in the Western League, did you ever see yourself at some point working in the player agency business?
No. I mean, I'm enjoying it now. I never thought about it. It sounds funny, but people used to always tell me you'd be good at that. And it was a compliment, and also, it meant I had a big mouth. So I would take it both ways. I would say, okay, well, Chris, maybe you talk too much, or maybe, hey, you are a nice guy. So it was one of those things. But I never saw myself doing that, But to be honest, I've been acting as an advisor for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've been involved with a lot of kids and a lot of families. And I've always gotten phone calls from parents about, Moults, like, what am I going to do here? Like, do I send them here, or what do I do here? How many spring camps should I go to? Blah, blah, blah. This has been my life for 20 years, where people have just reached out to me. It just made some sense. Outside of hockey, I was a youth care worker, and I worked for the Ministry for Children and Families. And so I've been working with counseling with kids and families my whole life. That's what I started to do before hockey. I'm still a high school advisor at a school here. I still work with kids here in town. It's like my fun escape from hockey. So for me, I like to think that I have a different perspective than just hockey. Like I see kids for kids, people first, hockey players second. So sometimes that people will come to me and say, "Hey, Moults, I know you're a hockey guy, but what do you think about this?" So the advisory role came easy to me as far as being able to, to offer an opinion and offer support. But like I said to you before, the business side, some days I can take it or leave it. Like I don't like fighting over, not fighting. I'm not a big fan sometimes of really competing over 13 and 14-year-old, hockey players. Like I want them to be hockey players. I want them to be kids, but I realize it's part of the business. But I've just been lucky that I've started working with families that are easy, just good salt of the earth people with great kids. And that means the world to me, where the type of people where I could go to their house, sit at their kitchen table and feel comfortable, so that's helped me a lot. But the competition drives me a little bit crazy because, as you know, you've been in there, you're still going to the rinks, obviously. And some days there's more reps than there are parents and scouts. Yeah. And at times I'm not sure that's what's best for hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems to be at even like younger and younger age levels now. Like there's a group of peewees I think in Calgary here that are a pretty good group of players, but even to just say that, like, to me is weird. And I know like agents have asked me about these guys, and they're 12-year-old peewee players. Like it blows me away. And I remember like back when we were going through it, and I had a friend of mine that played with Spokane. Like he didn't have an agent until he lived in Spokane and played
Mm-hmm.
at 17. And he was, I
Mm-hmm.
think you guys took him in the second round. He was top player in the midget AAA league in Alberta. He didn't have an agent until he was 17 years old, and now guys have him at 12.
Well,
Crazy.
I've had to do it, and I've talked to 07s, and there's some special players in that Calgary
Mm-hmm.
area, and I went to the Alberta games and watched, and what a treat that was to watch that hockey. It was great, but I get it, and that's the thing is, I said to my boss or my guy that I work for, I just said like these are young, and I said I don't want to cry in the shower one day or cry myself to sleep thinking, what the heck am I doing? Like I've got to be. And then, he just said to me like, well, you know what, Moults, if it's not you, it's somebody else. And that's a weird mentality to have. But I know if I don't at least say hi to them or talk to them, build relationships with them, then it's going to be somebody else, and it may not be the right person for that family. So
Yeah.
I get it. It's when I sent the pictures of some of our kids signing contracts and stuff to my guys in Ontario, they kind of get a chuckle because they go, man, do those kids ever look young? Because in Ontario, they draft midgets, right? So kids, that extra year goes a long way. And, here I have some young guys, some baby-faced guys in my program or in my group here, and they just kind of get a chuckle. But you have to realize that, if when you're working with somebody, it's a long time before an agency makes money.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure that you are working. Either I have to make sure that I really like the kids in the family I work with, and they have to really be sure that they like me as a person,
Mm-hmm.
because it's 4 or 5 years before anything starts to cook. You know what I mean? And so, you may think that everything's gravy now, but you have to look across the table and say, is this the guy I want representing my family 5 years from now? Right. And vice versa. Like I don't care how good the hockey player is some days, like I want to be with good kids and good families. So.
Mm-hmm. And in those 4 or 5 years, like what does your relationship with the player and the family look like when they're going through Bantam AAA and Midget AAA? Like, are there any similarities between, I guess, fostering those years versus in Spokane when you guys are drafting and the years in between before they play?
Well, I think it's my approach hasn't changed. I said that, for me, I just want to make sure that it sounds real. I always say it's like almost like being the uncle, like you're the guy that isn't afraid to give a kid a kick in the pants when he's not working hard or not doing the things, but you're the first guy to give him a hug when he does well. And it's all about support and direction. I'm going to support my players and support the parents the best that I can to help that young man attain his goals. But in the same way, I'm also going to let the families and the kids learn from their own mistakes and how they do things. Because if I'm steering the ship all day long, like they at some point they've got to make their own calls too. Like I've got to help them and support them and push them in the right direction and give them every avenue they need to be successful. But at the end of the day, they're still driving the ship. You know what I mean? Like the young man still has to put the work in, do the right things, make the right decisions, and then the parents have to support him in that. And then for me, I just want to be the guy that just goes, okay, where are we at? What do we need to do? Let's look at this, and I can obviously open some doors and other reps can open up some doors and agencies can, I guess. But for me, it's my thing is I'm an advisor, like I like to work with kids to help them, attain their goals, and it's all through advice and support. And so that's similar in whether it was in Spoke, until they're wearing the red, white, and blue, you had to just support them back in their midgets. Like I'd have some kids come off the ice and go, I hate my coach, or, whatever. And you'd have to say, okay, well, it's hard. It's November, you gotta build this relationship with this coach. You got 4 months left, and it's no different now. I'll have guys come off and go like, I just wanted to be on the power play in the last minute there and I didn't get in. I'm so mad. Well, I get it. So I've had those conversations on both sides as a spoke guy and as a Wasserman guy. So you just got to teach the kids that it's about patience and getting those opportunities and taking advantage of them when you can.
Yeah. Is there anything like that stands out for you that you feel you've evolved kind of as a hockey guy or a person from your role in Spokane to your current role?
You know what, it sounds funny, but at 48 years old, it's maturity. You know, I think that, you know, I'm learning now to just kind of, you know, learning to be more patient, because to be honest, there's a lot of things in hockey right now that I don't like, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah.
And it would drive me to the brink of insanity at times, where I was like, why, what the heck, why? And now I'm still struggling with it, Blair. Like I'm still struggling with it, because I still think that I always think, okay, what can I do? What can I do? How can I change this? What can I say? What can I do? I mean, I still speak to teams. I've had some great conversation with some Bantam teams about the Bantam draft, even as a Wasserman guy. And you know, I've always said, like stop reading stuff, get off social media, stop reading those things, like stop doing it, because you know, you don't have to play spring with the best players. Like if you want to, great. You don't have to. There's no pressure. You know, do you have to leave your house? No, you don't. You know, like I'm a big supporter of the CSSHL as much as I am anything else. But if it's for you, it's you. If it's not, it's not. You know, like there's so many different things. Like when I talk to teams, I talk about, you know, social media pressure. Like, why am I ranked here? Who's ranking me? What happened here? Who's doing this? Why is he getting? I'm better than him. Blah blah blah. And that's not only the kids; it's the dads. I have dads call me saying, "How's this guy rated ahead of my guy? My guy's this way." And I go, "Well, who's rating him? Like, stop it!"
Yeah.
Like, there's a million opinions out there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's my thing. Is it's, you know, I looked last year at the Bantam draft last year, and I look at all those kids from Saskatchewan. Take out the Yagers and the Heights, but all those kids from Saskatchewan, they played AA Bantam in Saskatchewan. Guess what? They got drafted. They attained their goals. Now they're going to – I look at Dawson Seitz, who was drafted by Edmonton in the first round, who had a terrible year for injuries, poor kid. But, you know, still plugged away. And so he played a minimum number of games, got to stay home, and was still okay, you know. And but then, you know, the CSHL does a great job of developing hockey players. But what I'm trying to say is, like, you just got to do what's right. People have to start doing what's right for their kids and their families, not what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. And
that's got to change, because I think we're losing what's important, you know, is building young men first and hockey players second. And it's tough to build young men when you never see your kids at an early age. Right.
Yeah.
So that's just my perspective. But those are the things for me, is I'm learning that I can sort of fix it, but I can only nudge people, you know, like I can scream and yell at the top of my lungs, you know, and go on my Twitter account, like sometimes I do, and vent, and then feel good about myself. And then, but I just think that people I'm learning to have patience, but families and dads and players have to have patience with the process and understand that, you know, if you're good enough, you're going to be found. If you're good enough, you're going to get a chance to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I agree. I think that's got lost a lot. And I remember my experience coaching Bantam AAA, and that was 8-9 years ago. And like the scouting, the Twitter scouts and the online blogs, like it was such a huge distraction for players and the team. And it caused, like, I know it ruined relationships, whether it was between parents or parents and other parents or players and their fathers. Like it was, and for me, I never understood why. Like, these are 14-year-old kids. They're going to get drafted or they're not, or they're going to get listed or they're not, or they're going to play. So why are you guys putting so much stock into these blogs or people online that are ranking you? And it was a competition of, well, why is this guy ahead of my guy? And then if you don't have him on the power play, he's going to fall another 10 spots. And I find, like, since then it's gotten 100 times worse. Well,
and it's and take the social media out of it. It's in the rinks, you know. It's Johnny Johnny's dad building a spring team, and he wants all Johnny's buddies to play, and Johnny's buddies are the best players. And why am I not playing on, Johnny's spring team where I'm just as good as him? And if I don't play for Johnny's spring team, am I going to get drafted? And if I play on Johnny's spring team, does that mean I can still travel with him and play with him on his regular season team? Because all Johnny's spring teams playing together, like, I don't get it. Like, you play with who you play with. I always say, and I will reiterate this over and over, if you work hard enough and if you're good enough, you will be found, and you will play regardless of where you're at. Now, if you're playing house hockey in Shaunavon, Saskatchewan, maybe not. But if you're playing, AA Bantam, AAA, CSSHL, doesn't matter. As long as you play and work hard, you're fine. But it happens. I get it. I've had, fathers call me that, run a little side deal on their thing, whether it's skill development or, like, let's be honest, everybody's a skills coach now, but there's only a few that do it well. Right. And some of you guys like yourself and some of the guys do it well, but they always have these guys, and then they try to tell me, what's best for kids and that I need to push kids their way. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not, these are kids, like, they'll do it. They'll get their workouts in, they'll do their own thing. And as a family, they'll figure it out, but I'm not pressuring some young guy to do something just because you think it's the right thing. So. Yeah, no,
and I even, like, since starting BAC, I've had a lot of those conversations with parents too. And it's, for me, I just want guys, like you said, that are going to show up, work hard, push their comfort zones, do the stuff you're doing, guys that want to learn and want to play and aren't concerned about everything else. And it seems that there's sometimes fewer and fewer of those guys.
Well, it's perspective. Parents and families and kids have to have perspective on the amount of kids that play junior hockey and the amount of kids that go to the NHL and play pro. And for me, I was a great player in my area, and it's a small area, and I played with NHLers, but like, that's where it ends, but the best part about what I remember was, I think I went to 7 straight or 6 straight provincial championships with my group. And I don't remember how I did in any of them, but I remember the stuff away from the rink the best, like those relationships that I had and the fun I had and the travel and the bus trips. And, that's what I remember. And not that you don't want to have success, but I think that when you're, like you said, when you're losing out on relationships and parents are squabbling over certain things, you're really losing what's important. These relationships are super fun and super memorable. And so don't let the pressures of the game, destroy, relationships or change who you are as a person. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I agree. Working with Wasserman, we kind of talked about how they're a huge player in the sports agency or entertainment industry, really. Has that had any impact on your position, like just the resources that are there, or just how big that agency is and how well they've been doing in terms of the whole entertainment industry?
Yeah, it's, I honestly, so I live in Fernie, it's 5,000 people. I'm born and raised, right? So it's not a sports or hockey hotbed. And when you're a young guy born and raised here, you don't have realistically, you're not setting your goals that you're working with the most elite athletes in the world, right? So when I signed in with Wasserman, I knew that, we had McDavid and Matthews and, Roman Yossi, and we just landed, we just got Carter Hart, who I'm a big Flyers fan, so that was exciting for me. But so I get all the hockey side, but then when I start getting the emails and stuff from Wasserman as a group, and then I was like, I say to everybody, I became 12 again, where I'm like, oh my God. Like, you have whatever, 2 or 3 guys in the NBA finals, 5 or 6 guys in the Super Bowl, 5 or 6 guys in the World Series, a bunch of the ladies off the, U.S. Olympic soccer team that won, like, just different, different genders, different sports, different avenues, and Wasserman's involved in all of them. And for me, I started to just sit back and going, man, am I involved in something really, really cool? And it sounds really, we had this COVID thing here, and Casey Wasserman, who is the owner and founder of Wasserman, he was doing some Zoom stuff with the staff. And it wasn't on a pedestal thing, I'm the boss thing. It was he sat in his office at his house and he answered life questions. And here I am, Casey's very successful and a big time businessman, but I'm sitting on a Zoom call with a bunch of people just listening. I wasn't really heavily involved at all, but I just thought, man, this guy's a very interesting, cool guy, and what an opportunity for a guy that has been in Fernie his whole life. What an opportunity for me to sit on a Zoom call with a massively successful guy who cares about people, and then with other agents and advisors and, staff of all levels listening in on this. And the one thing about Wasserman is because the agency is so big that I truthfully have I have the availability of everything, from marketing to so I'm walking as my dog's going here. From marketing to investments to, social media to everything, I have access to everything, you know what I mean? And to think that, if we can handle, those NFL guys, the NBA guys, if we can handle all those guys, they can handle anything I give to them, right? Mm-hmm. So I always say, like, right now you're building a relationship with me. I'm going to be your support guy. And when the time comes where we need some heavy hitters, where you need some guys that are going to push you over the top, then we have access to that. So that's a great feeling. And that was part of the reason I got involved with Wasserman as well, was that I was able to, I just knew that it wasn't a small time group, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I know that they have had so much success at every other level that it's not like it's not a fly by the night kind of deal. Like they've done it right. So I always knew that I'll have the backup and the support from many levels to allow me to be successful and allow my athletes to be successful. So.
Mm-hmm. And for them getting into hockey, is that because when I went through their website, hockey wasn't the first thing you saw. So is that something that they're trying to get into, or is that why something that you've been brought on to help out with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they, being involved with the org group and doing their own thing, it's something that they feel strongly about. Mm-hmm. And they definitely, Western Canada is a hockey hotbed, right? And for them not to have really any presence in the West was detrimental to them moving forward. And so when they had approached me and said, Moults, like, I kept saying, well, this is new to me, I'm not, and they just said, we just want somebody who's, I guess, respected and well-known in the West, that, people, when you walk in the rink, they're going to say, hey, Chris, how are you doing? What are you up to? And then you can tell them, it's not a new guy that doesn't have a presence in the rink. And I don't mean that to sound arrogant, but I mean, I have a presence in the rink. Yeah. I know everybody, and I'm friendly, and I like being friendly. I like that. So they knew that when I came into a rink, within moments of conversations with me, they knew that Wasserman had a presence in the West, and that's why they chose me. According to them, that's why they chose me. So.
No, and I could see that for sure. Just changing gears a little bit, you mentioned that you work with kids in your own personal life away from the rink. Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
So what do you do with them?
Oh, so there's a private school here in town, and it's called the Fernie Academy. And so I work as a bit of I pretty much stop in whenever I feel like it, and I'm part of the school. So I am Coach Chris. I run a hockey program Mondays and Fridays where we teach skill development, and I use the junior B guys. I use my midget staff here. We do a hockey academy from grade 1 to grade 12, and we just teach skills. And then on top of it, I go to the school, and if any kids have some stuff going on in their lives, like we have a full-time counselor in school, but sometimes they want to talk to somebody different. So I sit down and talk to them about life, and when I first got out of school, I was going to be a police officer, then I was going to be a corrections worker, working with young offenders, and then I got a job at the Ministry for Children and Families working with high-risk youth. So I did that for 10 years. So I worked in the schools then, and I really liked it. I like working with kids. So now that I'm doing, so the academy said, hey, Chris, like, why don't you just come in 2-3 hours a week, and if somebody wants to see you, they see you. And I have a strong personality, so sometimes kids will gravitate towards me, and so we just talk about life. I had a young man 2 days ago say to me, he broke up with his girlfriend. Do I have 5 minutes? And I said, sure. So we talked, by text. Even he was a bit broken up, didn't want to talk by phone, but we did it by text, and he's a grade 11 kid and lots going on. He's, thinking about university, and, he's broke up with his girlfriend. Is it the right thing? His parents are telling him it's the right thing. He's not sure it's the right thing. She's going to university, so those are the things that I deal with on a regular basis. I mean, I'm the poster child for ADHD. I have been my whole life. I am the ADD king. So I can relate with kids. And I just take time, I just take my time. So if somebody says to me, hey, if the office calls me and says, hey, Chris, do you have half an hour? Jimmy's got some stuff, school's, it's really getting him down and whatever. I drive down to the school. It takes me 3 minutes, and then I take an hour of my time. So I've done it all. Like, I worked with high risk youth, and I've seen it all, unfortunately, through my work. So after 10 years that I got burnt out, but I never stopped, doing it. So, and on top of that, I'm a player development guy for Fernie minor hockey. I help out Valley if I can. And I go on the ice. I'm carte blanche when it comes to Fernie minor hockey, which I love. So if I'm bored on a Tuesday night and it's 6 o'clock, I can just go put my skates on and jump on the ice and move pucks for the coaches. That's what I love. That's my favorite thing is the fly on the wall, is the guy that chirps the kids and has some fun. And that's my deal. And I miss that the most. But so I'm involved with kids at every level here, and so it's just something I've done my whole life, and I don't see that changing. So.
Oh, that's awesome. For me, in the couple years that I've known you, I think the one thing that I've really admired about you is just how honest you are, and not afraid to throw yourself out there and be vulnerable and talk about mental health, or whether it's ADHD, other stuff like that. Is that something that you've always kind of had, or did that come with experience?
Yeah, well, you know what I mean? Obviously, as well as I know, it's something we didn't share for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And now, life is hard, it's hard. And I've learned through, the challenges, my family's had health issues and stuff. And, you got to kind of put on the warrior helmet at times. And then, other friends of mine, I started a group here in Fernie a while back that supports cancer victims. So my wife, myself, and my group, we fundraise and we support anybody going through cancer treatments. And so, for me, when you go through that and you support other people, in order to be a supportive person, you have to open yourself up, right? You can't just say, "Oh, is that your issue? That's your issue. I don't understand." Mm-hmm. When a husband says to me, "My wife's got breast cancer, she's sick," I've always been the man of the house, and I don't know what the hell to do. Then I can say, "Well, have you tried this? This is I did this, or other husbands have done this, or." Or when, I've talked to lots of kids, I've had women say to me, like, "Could you talk to my son? Because he doesn't understand what I'm going through." He does, you know what I mean? So I've learned through that, and through my work with the Ministry for Children and Families, that, you have to open your mind and your heart, I guess, to show that people aren't alone in the process. Right. And that's the biggest thing is people feel alone in their struggles. Right. And so for me, I have no qualms about saying, hey, like, I struggle with this, I struggle with that, and, my biggest thing is people, the anxiety and the depression of everything, I wouldn't say it's exaggerated. I think it's so open right now, but yet so misunderstood.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, people don't understand the differences between what they've got and what they actually have or what they're working through. And everybody just considers it to be depression or anxiety when there's so many multiple levels of everything, And so for me, that's something that I've always been, I guess, good at. And, a lot of guys in the hockey circles, to be honest, thank goodness it's coming out now. But I mean, a lot of guys didn't ever want to show weakness, they always thought that, hey, but when you're pressured to play at a certain level all the time, and you're pressured to maintain your grades, and you're pressured to, maintain relationships with, girlfriends, boyfriends, friends, and, your dad, is pushing you, or your family's pushing you, like it's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot. And truthfully, I think now it's as bad as it's ever been as far as the pressure on young athletes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm staying my course. When my kids tell me they're shooting pucks, working out, I go, great. And then I say, what else are you doing? Oh, I'm playing Fortnite. How's that work? Who are you playing with? How's it going? Have you read anything? What are you doing? I said the other day, I watched Waco on TV. It's a different perspective, but if you ever want a chance to watch something that makes your brain think and makes you wonder what's going on in the world, have a look. Just open up your mind to different things and take your mind off, what do I have to do tomorrow, hockey related, you know what I mean? And sports related. So I've learned, the hard way to, through my relationships with people, that people have a lot going on. When I was a childcare worker, I did 4 suicide watches, and every kid was under 14. Wow. And when you do something like that, your perspective on the challenges that young people have changes, right? Yeah. And so that was a long time ago. God, it's been 20 years now, but I remember coming home from that and just going, I had no idea. I had no idea that kids got bullied like that. I had no idea that, a dad drinking like that could push a kid to the point where he doesn't even want to exist anymore. Those types of things. So for me, I started to learn very quickly, and that definitely made me a better scout and made me a better person, because, now when people look at me, I think, and talk to me, I think they can see that there's some empathy and authenticity in what I say, and that, it's, I'm here, whatever. I don't care I don't care who you work for, what team you're on. You ever want to reach out, you reach out. So.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Like you said, there's just so much pressure on players now, and just kids in general, not even just athletes. So I think for them to know that they have that resource that has that experience is huge, and I think it's something that there's probably not enough of right now. I wish there was as many people like that as there were skills coaches, but unfortunately, it's the other way around.
Yeah, I've talked to so many people, because it's kind of been on my agenda for a year now, where I keep saying to myself, what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? I know, what's his name? Bob Wilkie. Bob, right? Yeah. I mean, Bob's doing something special there, but to be honest, you need more. And the other thing you have to realize is everybody relates differently. Like, I can do great jobs with kids, and then there's some kids that I don't relate to them. They don't relate to me. So then they've got to find somebody else. You know what I mean? One person can't handle every issue or every personality. So for, even a guy like Bob, Bob's doing the best he can, but some guys aren't going to relate to Bob. They're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. You know what I mean? So then who's the next Bob? That's the thing, is if you need a multitude of those people, because not everybody can get the message across to everybody. Right. So some kids, my ego used to get hurt, because I deal with kids and I think, I did a great job. And then I get one kid and I'd be like, this kid, he don't understand me. He doesn't like my sarcasm. He doesn't get me. I'm too loud. I'm too abrasive. I'm not a fit. And then I'd say to the other guy that I work with, you try, try, because this one isn't working. Right. So, but we need more people. There's no question. Like I said, I'm definitely going to open myself up more to people. I've every chance I get to talk about those things, I would, but, I just think you almost need a hockey hotline, you honestly do, where you have, 10 to 12 people with access to phones all the time. And of course, everybody different, I'd have one teenage girl that would say to me, "Geez, I've had, suicidal thoughts." And then about 3 hours later, she's bouncing off the wall with big smiles, blowing bubble gum. You know what I mean? Like, so
Hmm.
it kind of peaks and valleys, but just the thought that that's out there, you've got to monitor it all the time, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah, no, absolutely. Did you find, like, in your time in the Western League, and the mental health, was there involvement there? Like, did it become more of a thing where there's more options, there's more support? It wasn't as much of a hidden, I guess, illness if people were going through stuff. Like, is there more options available for them?
I think it gets more and more every year. I think it's the Western Hockey League, and everybody openly admitted that they weren't doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
But I think now they're doing everything they can to support these kids, and I think that they're just learning. I mean, you with all the hockey players that have are struggling and those that have taken their lives, it's a massive wake up call, because
Hmm.
these guys made lots of money, and that's what people didn't understand. How are they depressed? Like, they made tons of money and played in front of people and played hockey for a living. Like, what's to be depressed about? Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of pressure. And so for me, I think in Spokane is different, because I'm not down there, and I don't know a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, but I remember being down there at one point, and we had a major issue with a young man, and it was one of the times where I'm like, okay, this probably happens regularly, and I don't know it does. Like, when you've got 23 kids in a strange place, and they're almost made out to be like superheroes. Like, that. I
Yeah.
mean, you put a Spokane Chief guy in an elementary school in Spokane, he's God. Like,
Yeah.
you put the PA Raider guys, you put them in their Raider jersey, and you go to an elementary school, they're heroes.
Yeah.
And sometimes with that, it's a bit of a burden. Like,
Hmm.
there's a lot of pressure on these kids to like, I got to act a certain way all the time, right? So for me, I when I was down there, we had a major issue with a young man down there. Major issue. That was the first time where I kind of went, okay, this is a lot more prevalent than I had any inkling. So.
Yeah, no, and I think the more you have guys, like, members in the league, whether it's Eric Doyle or Elijah Colina, like, guys that are sharing their story, I think it opens it up a little bit more for other people. And I think probably helps the teams too, just kind of take down some walls and have those resources available.
I think that the junior hockey in general, Western League, BCA, JHL, I think
Hmm.
they're all trying. I think they're all doing. I mean, I wouldn't say they're doing the best, you know what I mean? Because obviously you're always trying to be better.
Yeah.
But I think they're all becoming very more aware,
Yeah.
and it takes brave people like the guys you mentioned to step out and saying, man, I remember when we had kids quit after, their 17-year-old year, and literally, even as an adult man, I'd say, well, he's a quitter. He quit.
Yeah.
But you don't know, like,
Yeah.
what's going on. Like, they could be going home because their home life is a wreck, and like, they want to be home to help fix it, and they want to be there for their family, or you don't know. You just assume that they lost the passion for hockey. Well, there's some do, but then some just realize that they have to look after life, right? But
Yeah.
there's been some really brave guys that have stepped up staff wise and players where you're like, good for you. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, those are proud moments for me. But I think that the leagues are trying to stay on top of it as much as they can, and trying to offer
Yeah.
as much support as they can, and they'll keep trying to get better, and they'll keep pushing themselves to be better, and they have to. But I think leagues in general are doing a way better job. So.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's just something you have to keep doing,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody. So no, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We've been going for a while here. Is anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think, no, I'm good. I think that I'm hoping, this is just strange times. I think that, talk about mental health. I think that now is a time where we've really, really, really got to be aware
Yeah.
of where people's heads at, both adults and young players. I think that we've got to, understand that not everybody, guys are chomping at the bit to go, and then not everybody's going to be chomping at the bit to go.
Yeah.
Guys are going to jump on that ice and start going crazy, and some kids are going to be leery. Some parents are going to push their kids into a spot where maybe they don't want to be. Like there might be somebody that says, "Hey, Dad, like, I'm good for another couple of weeks here. Like, I just want to make sure that, maybe everything's clear." I mean, everybody has different values. I mean, not values, I guess, beliefs on the effects of what's going on right now. So we have the extreme left and we have the extreme right, and somewhere in the middle it makes sense, so, but I think we've really got to be aware here about, what we're doing with these kids, where we're putting them, and I just think we have to be cautious. I think kids have to have an outlet. I think kids, if they're going on the ice, I think it's great. I think that getting back with some familiarity is good, being back with the coaches that make them better, but I want to make sure that the coaches out there and the parents out there understand that, like, this is strange. Yeah. And this is a possibly once in a lifetime deal, hopefully once in a lifetime deal, that, that it's scary for kids, like scary. And
it is. And I've thought about that too. Like when we are able to get back to the rinks, like you're going to have three sides of it. You'll have, the skills companies, and myself included, people that have lost a lot of their business and are in a rush to kind of make that up in a small amount of time. And then you're going to have parents that feel like they have to have their kids on the ice every single day because they've fallen behind the last 3 months, and then the players somewhere fall in the middle of that. So I think it's something we have to be aware of, and at the end of the day, keep the players' best interests in mind, because that's what it's about.
People just have to realize, and I've said this online, and as I know the business is competitive, and I realize that, doing the extras helps, but it's also like the 21st of May. Yeah. Okay. So, like, let's put it into perspective. We're not sure when we're playing again. People think it's right around the corner, but it's not. So, like, don't panic. Like, I always say to my kids, even in the summer, I go get up in the morning, work out, go for a run, and then from 11 o'clock on, you go have fun. Yeah. Like, go to the beach, go hang out with your buddies, go whatever. You do what you got to do, but then do other things. And that's what I said for these guys. Working out great, shooting pucks great, everything's great, but then realize that there's go live your life. Like, go do some stuff here, because I don't know. Like I've said it before. Even I said it's May. People, like, most of the people be finishing hockey right now are still doing spring. Like, people need to take some time. So just understand that, go do it if you want to do it, but don't kill yourself. Like, just realize that, hey, like, go have some fun, let some frustration out, enjoy, learn, but then realize it's the 21st of May and we're not sure when we're going. We really, I mean, everybody hears different things. I'm sure you do too, but I don't see us going right away here. You know what I mean? We've got June, July, August, September, possibly. Who knows? I don't even know. So
I agree. And I think for some guys, I think this is going to kind of be a hidden blessing, like guys that need to just get away from the game a little bit and take a break and reset. I think it's going to be huge for those guys too. So it's just, I think the perspective that you have, and just be patient.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I just want these kids to come back at some point and come back loving the game again. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think this whole thing's put life in perspective. Yeah. I really do. I think that we've learned that not to take things for granted. And I think we've learned that crap can hit the fan at any time. And, finances can take a hit at any time. And, do people really want to put a second mortgage on their house to, put their kids through hockey? I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I've heard that, like people using education plans and stuff. And, maybe you step back and go, okay, like, maybe I need to look at this and say, okay, like, how can I manage this, help my son or daughter retain their goals without, killing relationships and killing my bank account and, you know what I mean, tearing up a family, right? So
absolutely. Well, thanks for your time. Really appreciate that. It was a really good conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of that.
Awesome, man. Yeah, like I said, it's anytime you need me, you just reach out.
Yeah, I think we'll do this again for sure.
Okay, brother. Take care of yourself.
Thanks. You too.
Okay, bye.
Yep.